What does it mean to be a leader? In today's political climate, being bold and taking a stance, at least within your party from the angle of the majority of Americans, is pivotal to elevation to congressional leadership. No, I'm just playing. It's money. No, seriously, that's what it takes. Money. And loads of it. Now, the New York Times reported that current minority leader in the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, says she has the votes to become Speaker of the House again, the third position in line to the U.S. presidency. The question is, why? What is it that a congressional member whose constituents are screaming for Medicare for all, a universally loved policy championed by Senator Bernie Sanders, the most popular politician in the United States, believes that she's the future of the Democratic Party in the U.S. House of Representatives, but does not support Medicare for all? Why is it that this congressional leader believes that she can lead the party to victories after losing a historic amount of seats nationwide over the past 20 years as both minority leader and Speaker of the House? Why is it that this $100 million politician believes that she should be the next Speaker of the House when all she seems to be promising her party and the U.S. population is more platitudes and cliches? You don't have to go too far to find the answer. And just like her stance on healthcare, that it's not with the majority of the country, the answer is both twofold and absolutely politically and policy tone deaf. Number one, she can raise the most money. If you were in Congress and someone asked you what makes you a great legislator, would your answer be something dealing with the direct policy or raising money from those who have essentially used their money to indirectly purchase undue influence within the government? Now, raising the most money itself is not necessarily bad. The problem Nancy Pelosi has is that she raises the money from the sources for which the majority of her party's base has an absolute vehement disdain. Think about it. If your husband or your wife loathed your neighbor, would you ask them for money and when you got back expect your husband or your wife to smile at you and say thank you? Of course not. Yet somehow Nancy Pelosi believes this method is her path to Democratic Party family unity. No, she doesn't. She knows she's toxic to the party nationally. She knows that there are calls from all over the country for her to step aside and allow a House member who is more in line with the wants and needs of the majority of the American people to take over the leadership. She knows this all too well. She just doesn't care. Why not? It's simple. It brings me to the second part of the answer to why she believes she should again hold the U.S. House Speaker position. Number two, it's her precious. Do you remember Gollum from the epic movie series Lord of the Rings? Now, Gollum's sole purpose in life became acquiring that ring of power. No matter what the quest did to him, his body, his mind, his family, or his friends, his taste for that ring, for that power, consumed and ultimately destroyed him. Sound familiar? The Democratic Party currently has two out-of-the-closet Gollums, Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. Now, for you social justice warriors, let me be clear. I'm referring to these two politicians as Gollum due to and only due to their seeming complete and utter infatuation with two high-powered political positions, the President of the United States and the United States Speaker of the House of Representatives. This has nothing to do with their gender, nothing to do with their features, nothing to do with their clothes, or any other trivial focal point. And yes, this had to be said due to the utterly absurd current political climate. Now, back to our regularly scheduled political discourse. Hillary Clinton is potentially eyeing a run again for U.S. president for a third time, even though she still supports the majority of the things that the country hates, and Gallup has her latest approval rating at an abysmal 36%. Translation, she just can't give up her precious presidency, even though she probably now has virtually no chance of being elected to the U.S. presidency at any time by U.S. citizens. On the other hand, Nancy Pelosi, when, quote, asked if she had the 218 votes necessary to win the speakership, she said emphatically, yes, unquote. says the New York Times. However, there have been growing calls for her to step aside for years now, and an even stronger call since the U.S. House of Representatives now has incoming freshman congresspersons who are much more in line with the will of the Democratic base than Pelosi. Even longtime Congresswoman Marcia Fudge is said to be considering a run for House Speaker. But Pelosi's response to that? Come on in, the water's warm. Translation? Pelosi simply doesn't want to give up her precious speakership, even if it means potentially setting the Democratic Party ablaze. On a related note, the Times also stated something rather peculiar about Minority Leader Pelosi. Quote, Ms. Pelosi is an exceptionally skilled politician, and many Democrats say she remains the odds-on favorite to return to the post in January. An exceptionally skilled politician. By what metric? Under her leadership, the Democratic Party has lost over 1,000 seats in state legislatures. Yes, although she's technically at the federal level, she represents not a state, but a district, which is closer to the people than even state politics. Also, she's one of the most recognized Democratic Party representatives in the country and does cluelessly claim to know what the Democratic Party's base wants. That metric? Well, what about the fact that the country doesn't like her? She has a mind-bogglingly low 26% approval rating from Gallup's June Congressional Leaders Poll, but the people and entities that the country hates absolutely love her, so it doesn't seem to matter. Why not? Because historically, you know what this means. This means that her policy agenda will lean less towards we the people and more towards them the corporations. But wait, isn't she vying to once again be the leader of the legislative body known as the People's House? Therein lies the all too familiar Pelosi irony. You mean that metric? Or is it that the Democratic National Committee's fundraising is way down because of historic political losses in the House of Representatives, where she's been the leader for well over a decade? Or was it the leadership's supposed solution to this funding problem? Start taking money from the fossil fuel industry again. Something that is toxic to both Earth's environment and the Democratic Party's political environment. Or is the metric of her exceptional skills as a politician or her being a master legislator based on her being great at perpetuating the cycle of a vicious system that is set up to bolster the establishment and status quo while simultaneously and perpetually hurting working class and middle class families? You mean those metrics? As you can see, with the exception of the dried up DNC funding, all of what was just listed is absolutely horrendous. That is, unless you're thinking from the establishment's mindset. If that's your frame of reference, the seeming metric to which the New York Times was referring, then yes, Nancy Pelosi is an exceptionally skilled politician and remains the odds-on favorite to become the United States of America's next Speaker of the House. God help democracy, because the Washington, D.C. establishment machine sure isn't going to. If you like this video, be sure to click the like button so that we can do more for you, and click subscribe and that bell so that you get notifications when we drop a new video. And don't forget to follow us on our other social media mediums at It's Time to Fight. But most of all, on Patreon, we have some of the most creative perks for you. So what we need you all to do is go and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/It's Time to Fight.